Good morning, Sandrine. How are you today?
Hi, I'm good.
Good. I'm glad. I'm very excited about talking with you today. We're going to be talking about building memories. And based on an article that I saw that you wrote on your website, spiritualdigging.com, I was really fascinated to learn more, a little bit more in depth about this process. I find that as my children are getting older, I am recalling a lot from when they were little, especially if they're dating new people and introducing new friends into our lives as a family. And so I thought that your article was perfect timing for what we have all been experiencing as a family. And so to really get us started and kick off this interview today, my first question is really based on pure curiosity. Why was this article so important for you to write? Because I know how important it was for me to read.
I think it was important for me to write about the process behind building memories because it helped me get unstuck. It helped me realize that because it is a process and it's not just poof, you have a memory. You know, something happens and ta-da, you have a memory, and and then you live your life based upon, you know, these memories that are in your head. It was really helpful to understand that there's actually a process behind it because it helped me just take some distance from the memories and realize that they didn't have to rule my life. You know, they didn't have to dictate how I felt about a person or a situation or about a group of people. Or so that's why I thought it was really important to write it, to help other people take the same distance and just learn more about the process behind it, so that you can choose. Really, you can choose to learn from your experiences and the memories behind them, or let them rule you.
And can you tell me if there was one specific event that happened while you were thinking about writing this article that prompted you to definitely go ahead and write it? Something that was personal in your life that was going on?
I think it's a little bit less linear than that. For me,
okay.
I've had a tough, you could say like a difficult childhood, some, difficult experiences in my childhood. So I think I grew up with a sense of, I felt like a victim for a big part of my life. I felt like a victim of circumstances or victimized by people, and this was a mindset that, and I thought, well, for sure, of course I'm going to feel that way, there's a certain amount of event that happened to me when I was little that would make sense. This is how you feel. You were a victim. You were, victim of, physical abuse and mental, verbal abuse. Why not? You were a victim. You were victimized. But I realized after a while that the mindset was generating my current experience. I kept on attracting more circumstances that would validate the fact that I was a victim. And I was at a time in my life where I've had it being a victim. I wanted to, I wanted to feel at peace with my life, with myself, and I wanted to know who I was without the label. Because I was at the point where I didn't believe I was a victim anymore. Consciously anyway, but subconsciously I kept on attracting the same circumstances, so I started digging to figure out a way out of it. And building the memories, like the process behind building memories was one of the first concepts that I could figure out, one of the first big aha moments. Oh, memories were not what I thought they were. And so yeah, that was one of the first steps.
So in your article, you write about how our lives are shaped by our memory of an event, but not necessarily the event itself. Can you explain that a little bit? Because I think it's a good follow-up to what you just said about being the victim and then not wanting to be the victim anymore.
Right. I think that as people, we were shaped not by a specific event. For example, let's say you're a little kid. You're just starting to walk. So your conscious level is pretty low because you're just a little kid, right? You don't have the cognitive power. You can't make sense of things. So you rely on your parents to make sense of the hurt and the feelings and all that. So you're a little kid. You hobble along, and all of a sudden you fall, bam, and you start crying. If your mom is across the room and she rushes to you and and she's she's really emotional about it, and she might be crying about it because she feels bad. She let you fall down, and because of the age you're at, you're going to internalize the feelings that she's projecting and make a huge deal out of it. Oh, my God, I fell down. And then you're going to cry, and you're just going to mirror, the projection that your mother is giving you, the emotions that she's projecting. You internalize that, and all of a sudden, that small fall is becoming a huge, huge deal. And you kind of hold on to it because that's what the body does. We just hold on to energy, and especially if it's strong, if it's linked to strong emotions. And maybe next time when you're gonna be apprehensive next time that you start walking, because you're gonna think, well, you're not even gonna think because you're so little, but you're gonna have you're gonna remember the feeling, your mom's panic and and the hurt, because it's all linked together now. So now her panic becomes your panic and becomes your hurt, and now you're just afraid of walking because, oh my God, it might happen again. But I mean, think about it from like different parents. Now it's let's say your dad is taking care of you, and he sees you fall and he comes walking along, assesses the situation, looks at you up and down, brushes your knee, and no, that's okay, you're not bleeding, you're fine. Now that the same event has a completely different impact. It took you, a couple of seconds to stop crying because your dad was supportive, and it could be your mom too, right? It's just the reaction that's different. But if depending on how you feed the event, what importance you attach to it, and what emotion you attach to it, and how much you rehearse it in your mind, how much you repeat it, because if you're traumatized, it's something that you're going to keep on repeating again in your head. Like when you have a really big fight with someone and you're really upset, and you repeat this fight in your head for days, if not months, if not years, and you feed it. You distort it, but in the long run, this becomes your memory of it, not necessarily what happened, the fact. The event is just the fact. In the case of the kid, you fell down, that's it, fact. Tripped, fell down, that's the event. But everything that's around it, that makes it becomes your memory. And that memory has the power now to affect the rest of your life.
So let me ask you this question as an adult. In my own personal life, I have a younger brother, and the events, the collective events surrounding the reason why we do not have a relationship, we don't speak to each other. These happened. These are events. There are feelings surrounding it.
Sure.
But there's, in my own evolution, I have come to understand forgiveness. But I can't seem to get through the memories that are negative. The phrase, the metaphor that comes to my mind is once burned, twice shy. So I'm not going to touch that fire again.
For sure.
I have no reason in my current frame of mind, my current mindset, to want to have a relationship with him.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, for sure.
So how would an adult go about building a memory in order to have peace and forgiveness and some kind of relationship that's more than nothing?
Okay. I think the process of building memories is important to understand, not to build a new memory, but to understand all the components that build the memory that you have of the event. The event took place, but the way you approached, the way you perceive the event is personal, is deeply personal, right? So you attach emotion to an event, and then you interpret it in your own way. So the emotion that the event generates and the interpretation that you have are extremely personal. And depending on how much it hurts and how much you repeat it, it emphasizes it. So over time, it gets kind of blown up, right? And that's the part that stuck in your mind. Now, I think it's important to understand how memory process actually works, because it helps you see that there might be a different truth to it. There might be a different version of that truth. You know what I mean? Your brother might not have perceived it in the same way. His perception of the event might have been completely different, and the way that he lived it might have been completely different. And it probably is, because he's not you. So he had different feelings, different reactions to the feelings. He internalized it differently. His rehearsal of what happened is different because he's his own person. So he just, interpreted and repeated that same event in his head and distorted it over time, but in a different way. And I think for me, it was important to understand that this was the process behind it, because I had to be able not to forget what happened, because you can't change the facts. I mean, you can't change the events. Events are not, permutable. Once it happened, it's in the past, and that's, this is the way it is. But once you know that, your emotion, your interpretation have such a strong impact on how you feel about it, then you can start maybe conceptualizing, and maybe you can start, thinking, okay, well, if I think about it that way, how did my brother felt about it? How did my mom feel about it? How did the perpetrator, because I don't know what the event is, but, how did the perpetrator of the person who created the event in the first place, what was their frame of mind at the time? What was, what memory, what triggered their behavior? Because once you start realizing that, memories, behavior, and it's all tight, it's really tight together. Memories is just the first step, but once you have your memories built, then around that, you have your whole ego is starting to develop around your memory, because part of your ego is to make sense of your memories. It just has to, because if it doesn't, you go nuts. So you have to make sense of it, and you make sense of it in the only way you know how, and that's through your own perception. And then your entire ego structure is built around that event, and around your interpretation of it, and around your memory. And so you see how it can become a vicious circle, because you're stuck in your own frame of mind, and you don't. And when it's the more painful the event, the more difficult it is to step away from it, because it's painful, and it's the pain that holds you to it. Because the pain has become part of who you are, and letting go of the pain is letting go of a little piece of who you are, and that's really, really hard. If you ask me if I'd have an advice, and that's a tough one, I would say that the best advice is always to ask for guidance, because the way I deal with things might not be the way you deal with things, and your inner guidance is the only true guidance that you can get. And the resolution of these kind of issues, it comes with intention. It has to start with intention and guidance. So if you are at the point in your life where you think you're ready to let it go, not to forgive it necessarily, but just to let go of your idea of it in a way. Once you think that, okay, maybe at this point in my life, I would want a relationship with my brother more than I would want to be resentful about what happened. maybe you can formulate it however you feel it in your heart. But once you come to an understanding that, okay, this is what I want. I want relationship with them more than I want to be right. That's once you're at this point, then you can ask for guidance. Where do I start? How do I start with this? And a lot of the time, life is starting to show you different sides of it, different side of that same truth. And if you're open to it, open to the idea of letting it go a little bit, or open to the idea of resolving it in some way, shape, or form, then you start seeing these feedbacks for what they are, just a different version of that same truth. That's it. And after a while, you just let go of your own truth. It becomes a little bit less written in stone kind of idea. You kind of let go a little bit, and you start to be able to consider it. Maybe that's not the only truth. Maybe there's other side to it, and maybe it's okay. And that's the first step to healing. There's lots of little teeny steps to really letting it go altogether, but that's one of the big ones.
I love that. I love the word guidance. I think that's a beautiful, empowering word.
And to me, that's the only way I can make it work, is if I ask guidance.
You mentioned in the article the 5 points or steps that are involved in building a memory. In memory itself, you listed as events, emotions, interpretations, repetition, and distortion. Is there an importance to the way the memory points are listed?
Yeah, because it happens exactly in that order, really. If you think about it, any events in your life, anything, you have an event, so something happens. Right away, there's an emotion that's going to be attached to it, because we're emotional people. We react to things. That's just the way it is.
So an event could be just as simple as a conversation.
Yeah, it can be anything, any event.
Okay.
It can be something big, like a car crash, or you're moving to a new house or a new job, or anything. Anything that happens in your life that's out of anything really. You could. When, for example, people who study mindfulness, they, anything that you do, if you really want to be tedious about it, is an event, right? You brush your teeth, it's an event. We don't attach a whole lot of emotion at brushing your teeth, but you know what I mean? Like, this is a tiny event, regardless. But anything that you would do, but our memories, the big ones, are usually the big events, because the day-to-day thing, to be quite honest, unless you do practice mindfulness all the time, you don't even pay attention to a whole lot of it. It really has to trigger your emotion for you to remember it in some, or not, because the really traumatic event goes on that's the other end of the spectrum. The brain just goes, nope, sorry. These emotions, like these event triggered way too strong of emotions, we're going to forget about them. We'll just store them somewhere in the back of our head, and that's it. There's a lot of them like that. For example, I cannot remember anything at all that happened to me before I was 6 years old. Not a damn thing. I can look at pictures and I have no memory whatsoever. It could be like, it's like watching, pictures from a stranger. I know it's me, but I have no recollection of what happened at all. And I know that, some trauma happened in that period, and that's probably why I blocked it out. And that's fine. I don't need to know. But, so you have an event, any kind of event, and then it triggers an emotion. Depending on how old you are, the interpretation that you make of it is really tight to the development stage at which your brain is at. So, if it's between the age of, let's say, birth and 1 year old, the only perception that you have of that time is really limited. You don't have a sense of self yet, because your brain hasn't developed to that level yet. So you identify with your surroundings. So that's, you know what I mean? So each development stage of the brain will put a different label on the emotion that you have in relation to that event. So, something that happened when you're a teenager is not going to have the same impact the same interpretation that something that happened when you were a kid, when you're really small, it could have the exact same impact. It could be just as traumatizing, but you're going to interpret it with the mind of a teenager, with the brain capacity of a teenager. And then once we interpret it, we kind of internalize it at the same time. It's because it becomes part of who we are. The ego makes sense of our lives by doing just that, by interpreting events and emotions and putting a label on it. You burn yourself, hey, this is hot, don't do it again. You're making sense of the you being hurt, and this is hot, so don't do it again. Mm-hmm. And then if it's because we're human and because that's what we do, we kind of think all the time, so we repeat, we rehash some events over and over again. And unfortunately, a lot of the time, we tend to rehearse and to repeat the negative stuff more than the positive stuff. Forgot who said, I think it's Rick Hansen who said that that negative emotions are like Velcro. They just stick to us. And positive emotions, it's more like Teflon, and it just slide right off. And it's true that in order for you to remember positive emotion, you have to make a conscious effort to focus on the good that happens in your life, because by default we remember the bad stuff, and that's also an evolutionary effect. It's not something that we do consciously. It's just part of evolution, because our brain is wired to remember the bad stuff in order to protect us from extinction, kind of idea, right? When we were cavemen, anything that could hurt us in any way, shape, or form, the brain would remember that was the bad experience so that we wouldn't die, and die off. So our brain is still wired the same way. We remember the bad stuff to protect us. But in our daily life, I mean, for us anyway, it's not true all over the world, unfortunately. But for, people like you and me, who have, fairly safe life, with a roof over our head, and we can still eat, and the things that we deem dangerous or negative are not necessarily threatening our physical health. Physical health, yes, it might, but not. It's not life and death situation.
Right.
But these are things that we perceive as being negative, and therefore we hold on to it because that's what the brain does. And if you let it, over time, it can really pull the strings. It can really, it put labels on everything. It just labels your whole life, and because these are the rules that you've made for yourself, by yourself, you follow them. So it's important to understand that it's a process. It doesn't have, yes, it has to be this way because that's the way your brain works. But you can, once you know the rules, it's like anything else, right? Once you know the rules, you can choose. So now I can choose, if I know that my brain has a tendency to remember negative experiences, then I can choose to focus on remembering the positive things. I'm making a really big effort every day to focus on the little things that are positive, that are helping me grow in a different direction. So that's why I think understanding the building memory processes is very important, because it can help you understand that the memories that you have might not be 100% real in the way you think they are. Yes, the events were real, but everything around it might not be. And that's the first step to letting it go, because once you realize that there might be a different way to look at one situation that's been so hurtful to you, then maybe it's okay to let go of the hurt too.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So my last question, just carrying to the conclusion based on everything that you've said, what other tools have helped you in your approach to long ago memories, and in essence help you rewrite the memories for who you are today?
I think the main tools that I've been using for everything to go through my entire, journey, it's always the same thing. It's intentions is the first one. What are your intentions? Set your intention, even if it's for one tiny thing at a time, but what's your intention? ask for guidance, and introduce new teachings, just because it helps you see from a different, it helps you gain different perspectives. So, for example, if you want to be a little bit more concrete, one of the things that I've been working really, really hard at, aside from finding who I was, that was the main goal, but the biggest thing that I wanted to get, to work well, was the relationship with my children.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my intention. My intention was to have the best possible relationship with my kids, regardless of events. So regardless of circumstances, it doesn't matter if something, happens, if they get hurt, if they get sick, if I'm grumpy. What do I do to get the best relationship with my kids possible forever, like at all times? This is it, like that. That's the one thing I want in my life, is the best relationship with my kids. And then ask for guidance. That's the second step. What's preventing me at this point in my life to have the best relationship with my kids?
Mm-hmm.
And usually things will happen. So for example, my daughter would just not come home at a time, like not respect curfew. And I would get irate right away. And, and then because I had set the intention to have a good relationship with her and my son too, but it wasn't, blowing up a fuse wasn't an option anymore, because that's not conducive to a great relationship. So how do I do it differently? Because I just didn't know how to do it differently. That's how I was raised, pretty much. You do what I say or else. But that wasn't conducive to a good relationship. So asking for guidance helped me. For example, I would say, well, okay, she's late again, pissing me off. What do I do differently? And, I would go to bed and ask for guidance. Please help me find a different way to deal with the situation. Why should I do? And I would wake up the next day and just hear or have one word in my head, or a short sentence, like pay attention. Like, well, great, pay attention to what? But then throughout the day, every time I would have like a reaction to something she did, I would pay attention. And that helped me see, for example, or feel some of the feelings that were rising inside of me, anger or frustration. And then I would just, stop them in their track and tell her, okay, I'm getting angry right now. I don't want to blow up. Please give me some space. And she'd go in her room, leave me alone. And I would have time to sit with my anger and then ask myself, why are you angry? What's bringing up that anger? I mean, it's valid to be angry, but why?
Mm-hmm.
And then slowly it would unravel that process. Well, she's not respecting the rules. And but why are the rules in place? I would play the devil's advocate and
right.
And kind of try to deconstruct the why behind the behavior that was sabotaging the relationship, really. And slowly, I would come up with the proper answer. And if I didn't know, I'd be pointed to the resources, like to a book, to a video, that would show me a different way to behave, or that would explain to me why I was feeling that way, or how I could approach it differently. So really the guidance, the intention, the guidance, and the teachings, these are tied together. And it's funny because I've seen it. I've seen different spiritual, other spiritual teachers saying the same thing when it comes to spiritual learning as well. I think it's true for every aspect of our life. You have to know what you want. That's setting up your intention. Ask for guidance, because we don't always know better. I think we don't know better, period. If we put ourselves in this mess, chances are we don't know what we're doing. So, if there's a higher guidance up there, whatever you want to call it, and it really doesn't matter what label you put on it, if there's anything out there that can help you make a better decision and have a better life, why not listen? Or why not ask? And the cool thing is, the more you ask, the more advice you get, and the more effortless it all seems to. And the more you learn, the less you feel trapped, the less you feel,
It's funny that you're saying it that way, because what I'm thinking at the moment that you're saying that is a lot of people might have a hard time with the vulnerability of asking, especially somebody who's in a leadership role for their work or their life ambitions.
That's true.
And yet, to feel less vulnerable, you need to be vulnerable.
Yeah. And it's your own inner guidance too. It's not, it is a little bit vulnerable, but at the same time, it's really comforting to know that there is something out there that's willing to help you no matter what, and that's willing to help you, to give you the guidance that you need no matter what, the right guidance. That's really comforting too. It's not, to me it was a bit like finding out that I was never alone, and that was a real comfort to me. I didn't have to struggle by myself. I could just say, yeah, okay, I need help, like now. And I did it a few times, and I wasn't even, I was not religious. I was a really big skeptic when I started this, bordering on angry, because, of the things that happened when I was a kid. I didn't feel like anyone was looking up for me. Like, it didn't matter who you were. They weren't looking up. I was mad. And, when I started to ask for guidance, I was skeptic and a half. But I thought, what do I have to lose at this point?
But you were vulnerable enough to ask.
And I was lost enough to ask. I was hurt enough to ask for help, because I realized I couldn't figure it out on my own. And I was isolated enough that I had no one else to ask. And I was too proud to ask for any outside guidance anyway. I would not have gone outside. So it was easier for me to ask inside myself than it was to ask for outside, really. But it's a process that works. It really works. Because, ultimately it's all about knowing who you are. That's the biggest of it. If there's only one thing you can do in your whole life is, become your best friend. Who are you? Figure out who you are, become your best friends, embrace it all, the good, the bad, the ugly. It doesn't matter. Like, it's you. It's all part of you. And your inner guidance is just like a smarter part of yourself that like can show you, like the way for a better life, for the life that you want, the one you want for yourself. But you can only get it if you know what it is. And asking for guidance usually is the way to see through the mud. It's just the way, it's just like a beacon. It's just a light that's showing you the way to get there. Because we get so confused and so caught up in our own feelings and all that it's really easy to just lose track and get stuck. You just get stuck.
Right.
And once you're stuck, well, you don't go anywhere. You're just stuck, and you kind of marinate in your own, feelings, and there's nothing good that comes out of that, because, you become a big pickle.
So when you put pride aside and you started asking and seeking guidance, was there a book or a meditation process or anything that you can think of that helped you get started? Or something that supported you through it?
Yeah. The very first thing, I think, is to be able to hear guidance, you have to quiet down. That's the thing. Like, you have to, your mind has to quiet in order for you to hear the guidance, because otherwise, you just, with all the noise, you can't hear anything. It's just noise all the time. So yes, there's a lot of meditation practices that I've done that have been helpful. Progressive relaxation was one of the easiest one to start with, and guided meditation, because I had a really hard time to calm down and get my brain to stop talking. It was nonstop chatter in there, to the point that I couldn't fall asleep. But there's a lot of audios now available on YouTube and other places. Actually, if you look in spiritual digging under portals, and if you click on meditation, it opens another website. That's the first website that I built. Everyone can meditate. And if you look under, if you look under the main page, in some of there's 3 or 4 slides, and I think the third slide is called "Where Do I Start?" And it has the meditation practices that I used when I first started, and it has direct link to existing videos and meditations that are on YouTube that you can click on and try. So yeah, that's a good place to start. Progressive relaxation is really good because it helps you release the tension in your body, and then you sleep better. And it starts slowly building a body awareness, because we tend to be separate. We live so much in our head that we have no idea of what's going on in our body, and that's a nice link to put back together, because a lot of the warning signs come from your body first. If you get angry, usually the anger, it starts in your head, but you don't see it. You can feel it in your body first, and then it explodes. So it's pretty good to make that connection again, so that you can start to become aware of what it is that you do and how it is that you create your own reality, because really that's what we do.
Perfect. And is there a book that's supportive of the meditation process or the guidance process? What readings have you done that have helped you? And can somebody find it on your website?
There are, if you look in Spiritual Digging under resources and books, there's a whole bunch of books there. Okay. The Wise Heart was a really nice one to start with. It's an easy book, but it's a really profound book. I mean, they're Buddhist teachings, and not everyone is going to be, keen on Buddhist teachings. But they're beautiful teachings. But again, that's what I said, that it's important to ask for guidance, because these are resources that I listed that worked for me, but they might not work for you, and they might not be the resources that you need at this point in your life either. That's why that if you learn any kind of meditation technique, anything that works for you, you can start with progressive relaxation or just guided meditation. Just listen to music before you go to bed, and the only important thing is to quiet the mind chatter. That's it. Just relax your body, quiet the mind chatter, and right before you go to sleep, ask for guidance, and you'll have your answer. That's it. That's the only process that, if there's anything that you should try to do, that's it. These two. Relax before you go to bed, any way you want to do it, doesn't matter, and ask for guidance. And your guidance is going to show you what's going to work best for you. If there's a meditation practice that's going to work best for you, if it's better for you to take a bath, whatever. It's going to point you to the direction that's going to work best for your own development. And I think that's the attitude to cultivate the most out of that and that's why I made these websites too. It's to put valuable resources in one or two spots so that you can try any of them and see which one works for you. Because it's really hard to recommend a book or a practice. I mean, as a starting point, yes, but it might not make a difference in your life. I mean, the only reason why I got attracted to these books is because my guidance kind of pointed me to them. I stumbled upon but this is how I did my whole growth process, is listening to guidance and just grabbing the stuff that, I felt attracted to. And It worked about 90% of the time. 10% of the books and the resources that I read were pure crap.
Love your honesty.
I mean, it is. Sometimes you're like, ooh, I should do this. And then you read it like, yeah, no, I should have asked first. That really wasn't good.
I love it. It's just beautiful. Well, I want to thank you very much for this interview. This was really enlightening and informative.
Well,
and
thank you for doing it with me, Lisa.
Sure. So in wrapping up, the 3 points I know that I'm taking away with me is to keep always intention and guidance and teachings with me in everything that I do.
Yeah,
do you feel that way?
I think
good.
It's a good starting point for sure.
Great.
And try to include some kind of meditation in there too. I mean, and I know meditation is kind of a scary word for people who don't do it. But you can think about it as mindfulness. It works the same way. You can just focus on your dishes when you're doing the dishes. They're just some small mindfulness practices that are really, really powerful. And it all, it's all geared toward the same thing, quieting your mind so that you can hear the inner guidance. That's it. So that you can perceive more of your surroundings, the beauty, everything that already is present in your life. So these are, for sure. If you do that, you'll see some enormous changes in your life. It's really all going to start to, unravel in a way and fall into